Welcome to GoFish podcast, where we discuss the role of emergence in organisations and life in general. Listen in to Brett, Francois, Kat and Joanna to hear what comes up or emerges in this episode. Why don't we start off by thinking a little bit and speaking a little bit about what is emergence and what is our understanding of emergence. So I had a thought this morning, which I'd not had before. Well, I have had thoughts before, but not specific. I was thinking about the relationship between emergence and control, and thinking that actually they're not mutually exclusive, and that if you are completely laissez-faire, then what can emerge can be control, hierarchy, dictatorship. So in effect, the world that we're living in has emerged because a lot of people have allowed it to happen. The majority of us have allowed the world we live in to happen and to evolve the way that it has. So that made me wonder about the role of emergence and how we can strike that balance of accepting what is happening, but at the same time, not necessarily control, but direct, I suppose, direct things so that they go in a direction which is beneficial for the majority. And I was interested in Kat's expression earlier about being relaxed about things, and they are going the way she wants them to. So you've got this idea that actually what is emerging is something that is in line with what is expected, what is desired. So that then could take us down a whole rabbit hole of esoteric thinking about the whole manifestation thing. And oh yes, you put it out there and it happens. Which I'm always interested in that thing about the law of attraction. One of my mentors used to say, the key is in the word action. Attraction doesn't happen unless you take action. So interested in how our inputs affect what emerges without the actual kind of like real hard control. How can we be like the ship's captain, so go with the flow but steering it as we go? Is that true emergence? I don't know. So I'd be interested in any sort of thoughts on that particular thought.
Well, it's interesting that you had the thought of emergence and control, because for me this morning it came up for emergence and safety. So I was tell you the story. I was walking with the dogs, and I just had the thought this morning to just take a different path this morning to just see what happens, and we did, and we just found we found really weird pathways that I've never really I know this sounds corny, but they actually emerged in front of us. And the first the first word that came into my mind was a German word. It's called unwegsam. And it translates to impassable, which is very close to impossible. However, in German, it more means, well, you can sort of say like unpathy, I guess. So more meaning, well, it's going to be difficult, but you can do this. Like you can go along this path if you really want to. If you have the equipment, like, I don't know, like some good shoes or safety equipment. So my thoughts just, kept going and going and going. And just to what you now said, I sort of thought about, okay, if there's no real, so for me personally, but if there's no real safety in the general environment that I'm in, so, I was in the forest, I knew the general environment where I was, I knew I wasn't going to get lost. So I felt safe enough to just let things emerge and follow them. So yeah, I think that is interesting to then connect it back to control, because in the end of the day, I wouldn't let emergence take over fully. I still needed to have the control, that thought, that safety sort of in the back of my mind of, well, whatever happens here, I know how to get back home. So I'm going to throw that into the mix.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that sparks for me the link with curiosity, is rather than having a fixed idea of the outcome, being curious about what the outcome is, being curious about the possibilities.
So I interpret emergence in probably in a slightly more narrow sense, in that, of course, in general language, you can talk that whatever happens and whoever does what, and in whatever system we're in, something will always emerge. But to say that doesn't feel particularly meaningful for me. So I'm interpreting the principle of emergence in a narrower sense, of it's more it's more almost. It's a phenomenon related to a methodology. It's a social construct. It's and is associated with. Okay, I'll give you some words which I associated with, and also the words that I disassociated with. So the kind of words that I associated with is self-organization, self-management, chaos. It's the order out of chaos, which is unpredictable. It's not the directed outcome, but an unpredictable, which grows out of chaos, and chaos you can't control. So chaos is when things are out of control in actual fact. And you can't direct things as easily other than using certain approaches like sense making, generative discourse, meaning making, and probably a contrast I'd like to make is that between diagnostic and dialogic. And diagnostic means that the world is out there, it's sick. We go out and do a diagnosis of what the problem is. And the fundamental thinking behind that is that it's a fixed world and it needs fixing. I mean, it's not a fixed world. The world is, we know what it is, it's factual, and it needs fixing. Whereas the principle of a dialogic approach is that it's actually the world is only what we see and perceive it to be, and we co-create our worlds, and therefore, if you look historically, that's what we've been doing all the time, and that's what history is. We constantly co-creating different worlds, and the emergence bit is what is exactly what emerges out of that co-creative process. So it's probably a less, it's probably more a professional, but that's not the right word, but use of the word as opposed to just emerge as we use it in general language.
Yeah. So as applied to an organization or a given system.
Yes, and definitely yes, and not individually. I don't look at it emerging as something, even though things constantly emerge in my life. But because the whole principle of co-creation and co-imagination is very much a co-creation. Usually, it's tapping into the collective wisdom, the collective intelligence, as opposed to my own intelligence, which is very limited.
Yeah.
So yes, it's very much a social process too.
And I mean, what you're describing is fairly close to the kind of theory U idea of letting go of attachment to what is. So rather than trying to fix what's wrong, actually just parking that and then imagining a different future, a bit like a kind of appreciative inquiry approach. So instead of fixing, you design something new, which is better and fit for purpose. Yeah. Joanna, we've not said anything yet, so you're looking very thoughtful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, first of all, of showing me different facets of emergence, that I would never walk that path. So saying being close to Kat's story of different paths. When you were talking, Kat, about different paths, I recall my walking in Miami, of course, by Google by Google Maps. And I took a shortcut, to one place, and it was like, it seemed that nothing is there. like the shortcut, it's worse than the main street. So yeah, but let's go there. And I discovered the local pigeons. Of course, it doesn't look at pigeons at all. the long, with the long legs and a very sharp, the joop, I don't know.
Beak, schnabel.
Yeah. So and it was amazing because there was so many of them, and I was like, while I was looking around, I saw more and more and more of them, and I said, like, I cannot see more of them. And then I turned back and I saw people sitting there, and a lot of Miami pigeons around of them, and I realized that this kind of stepping aside of the paths that we know, just out of curiosity, like Kat did, is giving us so surprising experiences. I see emergency a bit differently, but I always wonder if I understand well the word that I'm using in English. So what it means for me is, I put some notes here. Let's see. It's more sensing than thinking, absolutely. I even don't feel it's any thinking. It's an internal knowing, just being able to silence ourselves inside to see more, just to turn on the radar that is showing us more. So this awareness is showing us that everything is meaningless and all labels that we put around it is judging it, and duality, yeah, good, bad, pleasant, unpleasant, and so on, so on. So if we are really silent inside, and it is up to us, we can generate it. It's not, we cannot learn it again, because learning is again with thoughts. It's kind of readiness that we are having. I don't know. I have no idea. So this meaningless is giving this desired silence to go beyond thinking, decomposing what we already know, and it is about unlearning what Francois is often highlighting. So it's decomposing, unlearning, meaning not putting anything in a place that we are just unlearned. We are just living it, decomposing. And chaos was mentioned here. It's thriving in chaos because chaos is no more chaos, because chaos is again in opposition to order. And then we are letting go of all labels. And chaos is no more chaos because it doesn't have an an opposition here. And it's all soaked with calmness. And Brett, you mentioned about designing the future or imagining the future. I used to do a lot of imagining, but at the same moment, later I understood that it's projecting. It's projecting my wanting on, and actually it's putting ingredients that I already know from my experience, or I imagine from films, for example, from culture. Yeah, I derive from culture, and I'm putting with the small puzzles, the image that I think it's good. But I would like to underline here, thinking it is good, because actually they say everything that happens is the perfect that should happen for us for our learning. That means that instead of being fear-fed, fear-feed, yeah, which is bringing, like you showed us, the collective outcome. Yeah, so we wish, we affirm, we we understand the law of attraction. Yeah, we do, we have we do that, we act, but at the same moment, our soul is so infested with fear that it spoils everything. It's sabotaging, and the outcome is so-so, let's say. But again, what I'm doing now, I'm judging that the outcome is so-so. No, the outcome is perfect for our collective learning at this very moment. So understanding that and not trying, at least not to judge, the calmness is coming. We are truly accepting what's going on around, and we gain something, a kind of sacred space. I don't know how to call it, because a lot of these elements are happening beyond words. And this, I would say, again, it's a comparison. It's not one-to-one. It's this kind of, rather, it's kind of sensing of what is really going on. And this really going on is so suddenly so obvious, and we are so well connected that we feel that this is the spirit truth with the big T. And it gives us so many clues what to do next. We are like channeling the information, like brush your teeth. Now, let's do it. You know, go. Oh, how about this? Do you remember about that? And you are giving all this hints. And it is really amazing because you don't have to think anymore. You don't have to put the calendar, feel it, because it comes. But of course, the state in my case is not the stable one. Yeah, so this is very pleasant one. But again, it's not pleasant in the way we feel with this pleasure. Yeah, meaning it's more calmness. Again, I'm lacking words here. Yeah, let's stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the fear causing us to want to control or direct, or holding us back from fully embracing the possibilities that are there. And that kind of links into what Kat was saying about that need for safety. So I'm interested, be interested to hear from Kat, what where does the need for safety come from? It comes from the fear. So how can we let go of the fear so that we feel safe inherently without the need for an actual safety net? A bit like, you know, doing the flying trapeze and just knowing that you're not going to fall. So yeah. Any thoughts, Kat?
So yeah, not everything that emerges is necessarily, I would call it, emergence. Although you, from in a from a linguistic point of view, you could call it emergence, but it's not the kind of emergence that I've been talking about. And because I'm very much looking from a social point of view, from a collective point of view, not from an individual point of view. So, for example, quantum physics has shown that we can change the outcome by the way we observe. But individually, we're not going to change the world by just imagining. And that's a fallacy a lot of people think of. They just need to imagine or think it, and then it'll just happen. It might go in that direction, but it just generally doesn't happen quite that way. But what does happen is the collective thinking does seem to have an influence over the long term, and it's not immediate. So I'm very much looking at it from a social collectivistic point of view. And what's really important for true emergence to be enabled is that all, and not just a few, participants can participate in that. So that's why we need to create the spaces where everybody can co-participate in whatever it is they're participating in a dialogue or in a co-creation, whatever it is. And that doesn't happen. And it has to be come out of their own will. So you can't impose. You can't tell a horse to drink water, as they say. But you can present it with the water. And likewise with people, you can't force people to have a conversation about things, but you can create the conditions for them. And the fearlessness that's required, because a lot of people will not talk if they are in fear, if they don't feel safe. So I do think safety and all of that has a huge role to play in creating the space and conditions where that happen. If you don't have that, then you have emergence of a sort of a few people, but it's not a social emergence. It's not an emergence of the whole society. And so when you're coming back to the very thing you talked about at the very beginning, about control, the way you can influence negatively emergence is by creating a pretense of collaboration, of engagement, but in actual fact suppressing it through fear-induced methods and so on, and that's where control in a negative sense comes to play. And I think we are seeing a lot of that in the world right now. Is out of that. So I would have question marks about calling the world we currently live in as something that's emerged and that we've let it happen, and that's the way you put it at the beginning, Brett. I think because I think there were also some suppressions going on at the same time that put it directed in a particular direction, because as we know, and that's again coming back to Otto Scharmer, that we know it's either done out of fear or hate, or out of love. It's the absence of pre-sensing, and so there are the two elements there. So yes, so certainly safety, and that's why diversity is so important, because if you've got diversity, things will self-organize, and then with therefore, but the moment you start fiddling around with things, and we humans have a tendency. I mean, we've practically destroyed our whole world by fiddling around with things. Have a tendency to actually do the opposite.
Yeah, I think this whole thing of emergence is versus control is that emergence can be very quickly quashed by control. I did a 2-day emergent strategy session with an organization, and the founder wanted to let go of the reins and wanted it to be self-organizing. So everybody contributed, and we came up with this collective vision. And then right at the end, he said, "That's very interesting. Well, we'll go away and we'll think about it." And there was so much energy in the room to do stuff, and he just crushed it all just by taking that control back. So yeah, that creating the space, and more importantly, maintaining that space is absolutely crucial. Yeah,
I think it is really about that. As on a social level, so without getting into politics too much, hopefully, but on a social level, it is about safety on a social and individual level, because so fear and hate, I think, are some of the strongest feelings that you can have, and they come out of your safety being threatened. So I think with whatever is happening in the world at the moment, it has emerged, but it's also been guided by certain people who have a lot of hate, who have a lot of fear, who have their safety threatened. So having these spaces that Francois, that you mentioned, where we create spaces for people to be fearless, to have that safety, that is really, really important. Another thought I had when you guys were talking is that a lot of us have sort of like these fears or safety issues, possibly also coming from childhood. So, we mentioned curiosity earlier as well. If a child doesn't grow up within a safe environment, like whatever that looks like, physical, emotional, psychological, that child won't be curious, and it won't actually want to explore, let things emerge, because it won't feel, or it won't have the safety or the control it needs. So yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but these are just the thoughts in my head. And it feels like on a societal level, a lot of people don't really feel safe enough to let things emerge, or maybe they are frozen and just watch things emerge that are out of their control. I'm not sure.
I do think there is a learning process that we have to learn how to let go. It's not a question of just laissez-faire. Laissez-faire just means we let all our fears rule us and so on. It is something we have to learn, and it's something that's largely drilled out of us at school, largely. I mean, there's okay. I won't go there, but yeah, curiosity is. There's a phenomenon that the majority of people lose their curiosity when they're around the age of 6. And but there's also research that shows that that is true wherever there is education. It is not necessarily true in other situations. And we need to relearn and unlearn what the fear and relearn curiosity. That's one way of looking at it.
And I think that we've been talking about safety, so that really does come down to the psychological safety. And you were saying earlier, Francois, about something that emerges just from a few because others don't want to speak up or whatever. And I think creating that safe environment encourages people to participate and to say what they feel. It's the fear, particularly fear of judgment, that holds people back. So that whole creating the space, which is what we do, is create that space for people and create that safety to enable true emergence to happen. So yeah, and it is important to have that environment and to ensure that everybody is included by using some of the tools that we do to ensure participation is open to everybody. Yeah, I think we seem to be doing pretty well on time. So should we have a quick round of final thoughts before we close?
Yeah, if I may.
Absolutely.
The final thought.
Continue, Joanna.
Yeah, well, one thing which is really a game changer here is that feeling of safety, but also other feelings, or all of them are subjective, and all of them are related very strongly with a level of consciousness. That means that we can measure like how our employees are feeling safe in a place, but whatever training you will do before will impact the outcome of the survey. You know what I mean? So it's absolutely highly manipulative, and I believe that it's not the direction that we should look at. We more should go absolutely positive in building up this level of consciousness, because then everything solves itself on so many levels instantly. Of course, growing and growing here. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for your different perspectives, and I'm so happy that so many keywords pop up here. I think it's very valuable to all of us. Thank you so much. Who's next?
Yeah, so for me, it's the opposite, or I'm not sure if it's the opposite, but a kind of opposite to emergence is imposition, which is not a word we use a lot, but it's direction, the imposition. And most of our social constructs are done by imposition. In other words, this somebody or a group of people or something that imposes change. So if you look at change management, for example, that's a system of imposition, imposing certain changes. It's not a co-creative process, and that's why it invariably always fails, or most of the time. Yeah, it's letting go, and therefore letting the diversity do its work, the diversity of perspectives. So diversity is another key word. I'll stop there. Thank you.
I'm going to throw in another keyword, I guess. Talking about letting go, which I personally find very, very difficult, because sometimes I do like the safety of the control I'm having, but I also most of the times find it very restrictive, because it's just all of these restrictions of following these impositions that we are given. So yeah, those are my final thoughts.
Lovely. Well, yeah, and for me, it's it's about creating solutions that work for everyone. And I think for somebody to lead effectively, I think it was Disraeli who said, "They are my people, I must follow them." So it is very much about leaders tapping into that collective wisdom of the whole of the team, the whole of the organization, rather than just trying to use their one simple brain to try and direct everything from the center. It's creating the organization as an organism, sensing and feeling what's going on inside and also outside, so that you can tap into that and create a solution which is holistic, rather than something which is mechanistic. And that's kind of another thought that I had, which was around the analogy of the organization as a machine or an organism. And we've tended to think of it as a machine, but more and more it's becoming obvious that having a mechanistic approach is failing us. And so we need this more organismic approach in order to create holistic solutions.
Thank you for listening to the GoFish podcast. We hope you found it interesting and useful. If you'd like to know more, please subscribe on our website at gofishcollective.com and also follow us on LinkedIn. Thank you.